Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is just going to be a short recording of the tech talk that we didn't get to in the exchange yesterday because there was just so much rich conversation and exchange happening. So the topic was TAs and team students, and because TAs and team students can take on so many different roles, it was really difficult for me to choose a tool for this week's TED Talk. However, I thought discussion boards are used for activities that both TAs and team students are often involved in. So we're going to take a few minutes to talk about discussion boards. And discussion boards are an excellent tool to use to promote engagement and interaction in your course. But before we do talk about discussion boards, I thought it might be important to just quickly review the different TA roles in my courses and what these roles give the TA access in doing. So normally teaching assistants are added to courses automatically through Minerva. However, this is not always the case. And as an instructor, you have the ability to enroll your TAs in your course or change their permission to give them a higher level of access and responsibility. So there are 4 TA roles. TAs are usually given the default role called Teaching Assistant Default with a permission level that's similar to that of students, except that they have access to deleting discussion posts. There is TA Designer, which has full access to adding content and creating discussion forums and topics. There's TA Assessment, which gives the TA full access to assignments, quizzes, and grades. And finally, there is TA Full Permissions, which is essentially gives them the same access as you have the instructor. You can change your TA's roles according to the responsibilities that you want them to assume. So onto discussion boards. So they can be used for many activities, including an FAQ page, for introductions and icebreakers at the start of a term, as a space for reflective journals, as a student cafe, which is a space for students to touch base and communicate with each other, a little bit more of an unmoderated space. They can be used for group projects and group discussions where a topic is restricted to group members only. They can be used to support active learning strategies, which include activities for students to reflect or self-assess. And they can be used to get your students to do their readings and engage in conversation or answer a question. A comment that I often get is that it's difficult to get students engaged in online discussion boards and to get them actually participating. So it's important to create intention. I think that's the most important thing. Create intention when you set up a discussion forum and a discussion topic. And I have some strategies here that may give you some ideas in how you can get those discussions started and keep them going. So first is giving students feedback. You can set up your discussion boards for very basic feedback options that include upvoting or star voting. It's also important to consider if your TA or team students are going to be responding to posts and giving feedback within the discussion board. In a large class, it can be intimidating for students to engage in a discussion board. Sometimes, so breaking students up into smaller groups is maybe a way to create a more intimate space for them to discuss whatever prompt you have for them. You can also require students to post. An example would be to require them to post one original post and one reply to one of their peers. And you can require them to have to post before even seeing their peers post, which could be useful if you don't want them to be influenced by other students, or if you want them to answer a kind of knowledge check type question. It's also important to consider the question type. This one's a little bit obvious, but open-ended questions are very important in avoiding one-word answers, which will stop a discussion in its tracks. Also communicating expectations about posting. So are you expecting students to post? Is it going to be a requirement? What type of language do you want them to use? Is it more formal, informal? Also communicating expectations for online etiquette, which is also known as netiquette. And finally, moderation. So this can be similar to feedback in this case, who is going to be reading the posts? I know in some courses, Teams students are responsible for moderating discussion boards, and the instructors may or may not be so much involved. In any case, establishing who is moderating and if the moderators are supposed to read everything and respond to everything, or are supposed to, make comments throughout the term and so on. They're all important considerations to make when using discussion boards in your course. And so I would have passed this question back to you. Have you used my course's discussion boards? If you have, what worked well and what didn't? So, it's always interesting to hear your perspective and your experience because you're the one who are using these tools. So something to think about and something to potentially share in the next session where we're all together. Thank you.